hopefully Smart will join us as soon as he can. Okay, thank you everybody for being with us today. As you can see, we're still trying to perfect this process. These virtual meetings, they're working by the most part, but there are a few glitches that we will always have to work our way through, but we are in fact getting better. So as we do with all of our council meetings, we start off with a moment of silence. We know that there are a lot of people suffering from this very ugly, contagious disease, and we just want them in our thoughts, the families that are struggling and those folks who are out of work and all those things. So moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you guys very much. Mike, you want to do a verbal roll call?
Sure thing. Let's start off with Councilor Boehner.
Here.
Councilor Platt.
Here.
Councilor Pender.
Here.
Councilor Paulson.
Here.
And Councilor Ocholi should be calling in momentarily, so leave that. And Mayor Gibson.
I'm here.
President accounted for.
Okay. All right. Now, since I don't have a flag available, I think we'll pass on the Pledge of Allegiance.
I can take care of that.
You can take care of that? Okay.
John.
Hold on. Give me just a minute and I'll.
Ronnie, can you enable my share screen too?
Yeah, give me a minute.
How you doing, Ben?
Yeah, bring it over here.
Doing well. Thanks for inviting the district to join you all today. We appreciate
Glad
it.
you guys are here. Look at that. Boy, now we are really getting high tech. Okay.
Hi, Dave.
We can all rise. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may all be seated. Very well done. You guys are really getting good at this. I'm impressed.
All right, and then Mike, you wanted me to.
Yeah, if you could enable share screen for me, I'll get set up for Les.
Okay, and so we're going to have a special presentation from TVF&R, update from Chief Weiss. Or is Les is going to do it?
Yes. Yeah, I have as soon as Ronnie fixes the share screen.
Okay, how you doing, Les?
I'm doing fine, Mr. Mayor. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being with us.
I'll just go ahead and get started. You can pop it up when you're ready. Good afternoon, Mayor Gibson and City Councilors. I'm Les Hallman, Assistant Chief with Walker Valley Fire and Rescue. With your change in your time, Chief Weiss was not able to make this call, so it was my honor and pleasure to be with you today. Give you a quick update from TVF&R, and obviously we're going to focus on the COVID-19 crisis. First and foremost, we truly appreciate King City and the efforts that you're doing on behalf of your residents in response to COVID-19. You guys are doing an excellent job. We're pleased to report that TVF&R is still in normal operations. We've actually seen a slight decrease in our call volume. That's indicating to us that people are truly following the stay home, save lives message. And we so appreciate that and ask you to keep pushing that message out because it is absolutely making a difference. We're disinfecting all of our apparatus and fire stations constantly. We're doing deep cleaning on our transport units at least weekly. And then if we have to transport a high-risk patient, we're doing extra cleaning on those as well. We're equipped, trained, and constantly communicating with our frontline personnel. We actually have a task force that we stood up early on in this incident that's pushing out COVID-related fire rescue protocols, leave policies, et cetera. So we've been very proactive on this, And we're actually going to be standing up a second team very soon that's going to start looking at how do we wind back out of this. And we, just like all of you, we hope we're going to be there soon. I'm pleased to report that our personal protection equipment, I'm sure that you all hear the word PPE on a regular basis on the media. Our supply is sufficient. We're proud to report that, but we do know supply chains still remain strained. We were very honored to provide some PPE to your King City police officers. We learned that they were struggling a little bit and didn't have as much as they needed. I just want to thank the chief and his officers. You're such excellent partners with TVF&R when it comes to responding to calls, especially our cardiac arrest calls in King City. You truly make a difference for us. We've transitioned in the slide that I think that Mr. West is trying to pull up for you. We've transitioned in the type of PPE that our crews are using. We have a more sustainable PPE that allows us to clean it up after calls. And the reason I want to point this out to you, and the reason I want to have you see a picture of it, is it looks different than what the public's used to us seeing in. And it can be a little bit startling to someone when they see us step off of our apparatus wearing this. It looks a lot like our hazardous material suits. And we want to make sure the public understands we're not doing this. Thank you, Mike, it's up, it's showing. That doesn't look like what you're used to seeing with us. That's our Station 35 crew, our King City crew that's modeling that for you. As you can imagine, a person who's not prepared for this, if one of these guys walk up to the front door, they're going to be a little bit startled. So we're really trying to get the message out. We're using all of our traditional methods, social media methods, and then this flyer that you see, we're actually pushing out to our assisted living and care homes. We just want to make sure the public's prepared and understands that we're not wearing this because we're dealing with COVID patients. We're just wearing these because of the limited supply of PPE, and this style of PPE allows us to use it multiple times. It has the ability to be clean. So it's a sustainable thing that we're doing, and we just want to make sure that you're aware of that. I am excited to say, and I hate to use the word excited, I guess I'm pleased to say so far, we've only had one firefighter that's been diagnosed with COVID. And I'm pleased to report that they're already recovering and doing very well. And that's 1 out of 25 of our personnel who've met the criteria and have been tested. So 1 out of 25, we're happy about that. And we're still doing everything we can to keep our personnel safe. Our facilities, as you can imagine, just like your facilities, remain closed to the public at least till the end of this month. And then we'll just continue to follow the model that's being pushed out by the state. And our board will make a decision when the best time is to open those public facilities back up. We've postponed all of our community events. We are trying to stay out in the public as much as we can and safely as we can. We're doing drive-by birthday party wishes. We're going out visiting our hospitals. We've joined with our law enforcement partners, and we go out and drive, if you've seen on the media, and let those healthcare workers know how much we appreciate them. We're doing one tonight for Providence Newburgh, as a matter of fact. Many of our non-response personnel, our support personnel, are working from home. We're responding to all the questions and concerns related to inspections, plans review, and other city and county business needs as needed. Our firefighter and paramedic recruits, we actually have 2 academies up and running right now. We've had to adjust how we're delivering those academies. We had to keep them going because we need those firefighters and paramedics on the street. So what we've done is we've knocked academies down into what we're calling pods. We're making sure they're maintaining physical distancing. They're wearing their mask while they're there. So it's a little different, but we're getting it done, and we hope to have those recruits rolled out pretty soon. We've also pushed out a message, as you've seen, our partners, DEQ, the State Fire Marshal, and the Oregon Department of Forestry are all asking people to please refrain from doing open burns. We joined in Clackamas County Fire District 1 and us pushing out messages asking people please refrain from burning. As you can imagine, it would be a really negative impact from any smoke in our region, and it's going to help protect our vulnerable populations. Chief Weiss is our star in a public service announcement that we pushed out this week, encouraging people to continue to stay home and stay safe and to save lives. You'll see it pretty soon, hopefully, on some of your local TV stations. And if not, you can certainly visit our Facebook page and see the video there. Like all of our city and county partners, we've been very focused on logistics, operations, and communications with our internal and external audiences over the past month. We realize, however, that we were missing our firefighter and support personnel's families. That was a population we missed. Chief Weiss recognized that. We felt that we needed to do something special for our firefighters' families. So we've stood up a special web page just for them. And on that website, there's special messages for our family members, extended family members, as well as resources for them on mental health, safety, and support. As you can imagine, our firefighters are only going to be successful if they have that family support that is so needed. We're going virtual, just like you are on our board meeting. We have a board meeting coming up April 28th. That'll be the first board meeting that we're doing virtually. Mayor Gibson, I'm gonna watch you closely and tell the president how to do this. And you'll see details soon on when that meeting's coming up.
Okay.
We'll continue to send Mr. Weston our weekly updates. And we continue to connect with Mr. Weston through Division Chief Alan Kennedy, and then our friends at King City Station 35, Captain Barry Quinn, as you know, always works very closely with your city. And Mr. Mayor, that's the interim report, and glad to answer any questions if there are any.
All right, you did a wonderful job. We truly appreciate everything that you guys do. And you just have always been here for us. The community loves you, and we can't tell you enough of how much we appreciate what you guys do on an ongoing basis. And it is really encouraging to know that calls are actually down. And I hope that's a good sign that things are moving in a direction that people are being safe and paying attention to the personal distancing and the things that are going to get us through this. But that is encouraging to me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have any questions or concerns from anyone else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I wanted to ask, are calls down, do you think because of fewer car accidents, because there's less traffic on the roads?
Absolutely, Counselor. That's one of many reasons, but we're glad that we really feel people are paying attention. You guys have seen traffic's down, people are not out and about, and we know for a fact that's contributing to our lower call volume. And just as the mayor pointed out, that's a good sign that we have that lower call volume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, Les, thank you very much. It sounds like you covered it all, and we look forward to you guys staying healthy. And my thoughts go out to the one individual who has, in fact, been diagnosed with the COVID, the coronavirus. And we wish that person well and a speedy recovery, full recovery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next up at 5.2, we have the Tualatin Tiger Tualatin School District overview presentation. We are just so excited to have one of our newest King City residents, and that's Dr. Susan Rieke-Smith, and board members Maureen Wolf and Ben Bowman. So we're excited to have you guys with us.
Well, thank you, Mayor. It is such a pleasure, number one, to say that I am a proud resident now of King City. And my husband and I have enjoyed, even though it's been in quarantine, getting to know the neighborhood and the community at large. And it's just a real pleasure to be with you all today. I'm going to ask our community director, Tracy Rose, to put up our presentation. And so, Ronnie, maybe if you can, give her a hand here, that would be super.
Tracy, see if that worked. Tracy, can you hear me okay? Or did we lose you?
Okay, can you not see it? It should be up.
Mike, just so you know, I have your screen on as a shared screen. There we go.
Okay,
Perfect. There we go.
Boy, we're getting good at this. I'm so impressed. All right.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Marvelous. Well, again, Mayor and Council, we thank you for the opportunity to do a brief but high-level district overview of the district in general and our current situation specifically. Tracy, if you could move forward one slide. I also want to, as I share with you, our school board want to say thank you to King City and to the support that we receive from you broadly and specifically from the police department relative to patrolling and supporting our schools, specifically Deer Creek. And we're very grateful for your partnership. Again, as a member of the community, I feel very much vested here, not only as a superintendent, but certainly as a citizen of King City. Before you, you have our 5-member board. Tracy, I apologize. Chair Wolf, who will be part of the presentation today. Vice Chair Sharon Fox, Director Ben Bowman, and thank you, Director Bowman, for setting this up and giving us this opportunity. Director Karen Emerson and Director Jill Zerschmied. Okay, Tracy, next slide. Just in general, and I've got to get the screen over so I can see. We have 10 elementary schools, 3 middle, 3 high schools, and 1 charter. And you can see the numbers there from our 1819 state report card, as well as the schools that comprise those numbers. Certainly best known to you is Deer Creek Elementary. Our district is founded on 4 cornerstones, which make our strategic plan. One has to do with the student achievement and that we prepare students for success. The second and all-encompassing is equity, that we believe that success is reflected in high expectations and a belief in all students, not some. That it is predicated also on hiring, supporting, and retaining catalysts for learning in terms of human talent. And that it revolves around the importance of climate and culture. And certainly these days have brought that very vividly to the fore, that the social and emotional supports that we have for our students and our families are key to encouraging our students to learn well. Our mission is that we educate every child. And the principal work of the district equity leadership team is to make sure that we are not only instructing all, but that we are closing the racial achievement gap through transformative practice and looking for those opportunity gaps that need to be closed. And one of the areas I would tell you right out of the gate that is important, that came immediately to the fore, was accessing and understanding the needs for hotspots and internet connectivity as we were directed to transition to distance learning by the state. To bring us to that point, you see here the last large convening that we've had in the district. This was on March 12th, and when the board convened our communities across. We were grateful for municipalities who were able to join us, and this is because this is how we like to work, is in collaboration with our municipalities and our community leaders, and to make a decision relative to closing early in hopes of trying to get ahead of what we believed at that point was a fairly self-limiting situation with coronavirus, which we now know is a much longer term. But I wish to give kudos to the board and to community leaders in front, one of the first ones to make that call, and then certainly the governor supporting that days later. Which brings me to this slide here. We closed on the 12th when we learned that there would be at least a week in conjunction with spring break in hopes of getting ahead of it. By the 17th, we understood the governor to come back and tell us that no, it would probably be until April 29th. And now, as of last week, we now know that we will not be back in brick and mortar for the rest of the year, and will continue to instruct via distance learning. This shows where you and any city member of our community can go to understand how we are working with distance learning. You can see up in what would be the far left-hand corner, our website, ttsdschools.org. When you go there and click on COVID-19, this page comes up. And as you click on each one of those, you can see how we are instructing via distance learning. within those various grade bands. You also see the amount of crisis support that we are providing, resources. We provide translated resources. And then we have a press center that also keeps our community updated as to any changes and guidance that we receive from the state, either Oregon Department of Education or the governor's office, and certainly anything locally. Next slide. And here I would like to then transition to Director Bowman to kind of guide you to spend a few moments guiding you through our student and family services in terms of wraparound services that are being provided during the crisis, as well as the strength of student leadership. So Director Bowman.
Thank you, Dr. Sue. So the first thing that we wanted to touch on was, Dr. Sue mentioned that big collaborative meeting we had to close down our district, which was in advance of the statewide order. One of the things that surfaced at that meeting from municipal partners, our schools foundation, our teachers, was for a lot of students, our schools are the primary means that they access nutrition. And with schools closing, for at that time it was 2 weeks, there was a concern about how do we get nutrition services to these students. And so what we have been able to do is open up grab and go meal sites at 2 of our elementary schools, one at Metzger in Tigard and one at Tualatin Elementary in Tualatin. We have 4 additional sites coming up soon. That's correct, Dr. Sue, right?
Correct.
So we'll be expanding our grab and go meal sites, basically where students can come pick up meals and leave that are packed with breakfast and lunch at those sites. But the other thing that we did in our community, and this is something I'm really proud of, how quickly our community was able to come together, is we started what we're calling Pack with Pride, which is a food program that's based out of the Tigard High School cafeteria. It's a partnership between the school district, the schools foundation, the teachers union, the student association. And basically what we do is we pack up boxes of food with about a week's worth of food for a family of 5. And on Fridays, we have a drive-through pickup system where it's no contact curbside pickup for vulnerable families. And then on Saturday, we deliver. And last week, we delivered almost 300 boxes of food to families who had transportation issues or for healthcare reasons couldn't leave their homes. And these students were students identified by educators in the schools as having the highest needs. They're part of what we call our Backpack Buddies program. So students who are sent home with food on the weekends. And that's really who we're trying to target with this program. And it's been, really inspiring. Just today, Maureen and I were at Tigard High School and we were prepping for, tomorrow's the big day where we get a big shipment of food. We're ordering in bulk now to save money and be more efficient. And the PSO president from Templeton Elementary School, which is an elementary school in Tigard, showed up unannounced with a check for $10,000 to Pact with Pride. And I just thought it was such a beautiful moment because it was a PSO, a parent group who'd raised all this money for their elementary school. And they weren't saying, hey, make sure this goes to our kids or make sure this is serving our kids. They said, we want to make sure every kid in our community is fed. And that's the response we've seen from businesses, from faith-based organizations, from student leaders, from parents, from teachers, is really just a coming together as a community, and not just Tigard and Tualatin, King City, Durham, Metzger. We've all sort of come together to partner. So really proud of the work that we've done and grateful for the support of the district. And, Dr. Sue moved mountains to make this acceptable in such a short time frame. So really grateful for everyone's partnership there. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about is our student leadership in Tigard Tualatin. I think one of the unique things in our district is I think we probably have the most engaged and empowered student population when it comes to district level decision making of almost any other district. This year, our students founded what they call the Tigard Tualatin Student Union. They put on a student voice summit, which was intended to elevate the voices of students when it comes to policy making. They administered school-wide surveys at both Tigard and Tualatin High School about extracurricular fees and what was preventing students from participating in sports, music, the arts, etc. They organized a Unity Day, which, one of the minor tragedies of coronavirus was the day that the governor said no more assemblies was the day of our Unity Day assembly. So these students had spent months basically trying to create a program where students could talk openly about race and could talk openly about discrimination and could talk openly about hate speech. And they had this really amazing, beautiful program planned. And that was the day that all assemblies got canceled. So they were really devastated that it couldn't happen then. But I think the good news is that it's going to happen. It's just a question of when, not a question of if. So we've got 3 student representatives who serve on our school board, representing Creekside Community High School, Tigard High School, and Tualatin High School. And I think, it just really is cool that in our district, we see students as partners, just like we see parents, just like we see teachers, and they're at the table with us when we're making these decisions. So you can see some of the pictures here. That bottom left picture I really like. That's Matt Brown and Kavish Shrestha. They're the co-presidents of the student union. And when our district decided to close down schools, all the newspapers and TV cameras came to film, because we were the first district in Portland to close down. And they didn't want to talk to Maureen and I about the closure. They wanted to talk to the student leaders who joined us at the meeting and weighed in about what this meant from the student perspective. So you can see from some of the activities they've done, we've got a very engaged student population.
Okay, I think that's my cue. Thank you all again for this invitation to share what's TTSD. And I think one of the things that I am so very proud of, this is now my 11th year serving on the board, is again, back to community ties. I have been active on our bond campaigns for 12 years. And I am so proud of how everyone stands up and really supports our schools. For example, in our last levy campaign, which then, of course, at this point, dollars every year into our general fund, $50 million for 5 years. That levy approval rate was, I think, 3%, which was approved in 2016, was at an approval rate of roughly 59%. These are amazing numbers that really speak to you all, because I can't emphasize how critical King City is in the decisions that impact our district. I've done presentations to King City members. I've done it at Summerfield or the CPOs, and you know, voting on and support us. And I just truly can't thank you enough for that. I also want to do I'm kind of walk through the bond pieces. Our bond issue in 2016 was $291 million. And because of our fiscal stewardship, which I think a lot of you really do track and pay attention to, we were able to generate over $50 million in bond premium. And I really do believe that is how a huge kudos to our CFO, but how this district runs. And I know that that all matters to you and our fiscal responsibility to our students and to our community. So our bond projects, such an exciting time for us to see some real transitions in our buildings. The new ones that opened this fall, Templeton Elementary and Creekside Community High School. As you know, the Durham Center was there, and then we were able to create such amazing community for our op students in this facility. Some of you have been there through community meetings, but it's really a beautiful building that really creates a home space for so many of our students. Templeton replaced one of our oldest elementary schools, and that is also just a wonderful place for our young students. And then transitioning to our next one's Tigard High. If you were unable to attend the grand opening for phase 1, I am really excited when the total building is completed, hopefully by this summer. Again, all silver lining, all this distance learning is Penn's construction. Elevated their timelines. They've got in and are really trying forward to get this building re-enter, hopefully truly complete at Tigard High. So we're excited about that. And then also major renovations, again, to expand our classrooms and our STEM opportunities at Tualatin High School as well. And okay, Tracy, and then yeah, Tualatin, we have 2 major construction projects still kind of in process. In terms of Tualatin, was essentially a brand new building that will head into 2021, and it will be such a replacement, again, the oldest buildings, if not the oldest, I think, in the district. That, of course, is in the same campus, if you will, as Templeton Elementary. So be quite a different landscape when both those buildings are completed. And those, I think, are, yeah, scheduled for early 2021. And then part of our goal also with this bond was to ensure that we impact everything, so that every community in our neighborhoods felt had some work done on their buildings, and a big priority focus beyond the need for new construction on some of our old is the safety aspect. So a lot of our listed here, Bridgeport, Byram, Durham, they're all essentially the same agencies. In those offices, the vantage points were set back, and sadly, in today's climate, you really want those offices up front and have wide vantage points to see. And we've work in many of our meetings. And then, as you can see, summer 2020, we're looking at some of the improvements as well in the schools listed. And I think I have to again give a huge shout out to our teams, because if you all remember, we hit 2015 is when we did all the planning. 2016, we went out with the fund and were approved, and then everything escalated out of control. And our team really reassessed, looked, how do we effectively do this bond with the money we have? Again, the premiums really came in and supported those efforts. I'm really proud to see and to say where we are in completing these buildings. And our final building, for many of you who knew art, will be the Art Rutkin Elementary that's scheduled for fall 2022 to open, and that is right down on Beef Bend Road. And that process is still, the planning phase is essentially wrapped up, and we're eager to start work on that building. And I think, Tracy, is that my last slide? So yes, and I will hand it to Sue on our fiscal overview. So thank you all.
Thank you.
So these numbers that we're showing you here are for 1920 pre-COVID. And so this is how we started the year, and you get a sense on slide number 1, who are the students that we serve, and what programs are we focused to relative to our students who are navigating fiscal economic insecurity, our students who are emerging bilinguals, and our students who require specialized instruction. On the slide to your right, you see the sources of our funding. 88%, 0.8% comes from the state in terms of the state school fund. That comes out of the general state budget. Then there is a local option, which again, we want to say thank you for your continued support. And then other revenue grants and other types of revenue that flow into the district. As you can see, 64.3% of that is focused relative to supporting instruction, and then the rest has to do with operations and support activities. Again, this is pre-COVID, and you can certainly see at the bottom of that slide to the right that revenues continue to lag behind expenses. Primarily, the driving force, as you well know, as a municipality, is the PERS issue. Next slide, please. As you're also aware, we went through a process this year relative to the Student Investment Account and the Student Success Act. And you can see here the purpose of that account was, first and foremost, we needed to develop a plan with our portion of those dollars to meet student mental health and behavioral health needs. And the second was to increase academic achievement and reduce disparities for students of color, disabilities, emerging bilinguals, and those navigating poverty, homelessness, foster care, and especially those students relative to who are historically experiencing disparities in our schools. And that, if you remember the beginning of our presentation, relative to one of our cornerstones, the equity cornerstone, this speaks very loudly to what we believe as a district. We engaged in a very public, very broad process. And again, pre-COVID, we were looking at potentially a share of about $10 million coming to the district. We now know that that is on hold, which takes me to the next slide. Relative to now that we are in the middle of COVID, I think you also understand as a municipality that the state is going to be facing some challenges relative to its general state budget. And so we are in a position now of trying to be patient and wait for the final number from the state, or at least a number that we can anchor to as we develop our budget for the 2021 school year. We also know that there will be impacts relative to the Student Success Act and the student investment account. We absolutely understand the struggle that you as a municipality and we in general in this community, the impact on businesses and on families and on the rate of unemployment that is absolutely historic and quick and deep. So we are very much mindful of the overall economy and the fiscal health, not just of our local communities, but our state as a whole. And what that means for us is that about 5 years ago, the district entered into a strategy known as Smarter School Spending. And it is a very thoughtful process that takes a look at those strategies and staffing that get the biggest results for students. And we actually measure it. So there is a return on academic investment. And it is specifically, while we have enjoyed the opportunity to invest in the last couple of years, this strategy will absolutely loom large as we go into facing the budget downturn from the state and really continuing to sharpen our pencil and be fiscally prudent as we go into potentially a 12 to 24-month period as the state works its way back into economic health. And so without that Smarter School Spending strategy and the processes that we have in terms of taking a hard look at the outcomes for those students and whether we should continue or whether we should stop and reallocate those dollars, we are currently in that process now as we are looking for savings and ways in which we can close a potential gap, as well as reallocate to those things that are most impactful for students. And I believe, is that our last slide? So again, we just want to say thank you for this opportunity to be the mayor and council. And I also want to give my thanks to Councillor Platt. He drew short straw as I am his next door neighbor. And I'm grateful for his leadership and his welcoming us into the community. And with that, Mayor, we'll take any questions that you may have.
Well, I just want to thank you guys. That was outstanding. And, I really feel as if we're establishing a wonderful partnership with the school district. Even though we only have Deer Creek, it's very important to our community. We're excited about some of the things that we've been able to accomplish so far. We're excited about the improvements that we made on 131st Avenue to make it safer, encouraging walking and biking to school and safe crossings. So that was near and dear to our hearts. And I give Mike Weston full credit for his vision on what that improvement might look like. And it started and finished on time, and we can see the benefits of it. Well, we were seeing the benefits of it before schools got shut down, where we observed more children walking to school along with their parents, and that is very encouraging. So we thank you guys, and we know that you guys are doing everything you can, and this is something that we never thought we were going to be faced with, where you're trying to educate virtually and all of those things, but I know we're going to get through it, but we only get through it because of people like you guys who are sincere and dedicated to what you're doing, and we appreciate it. But I want to really emphasize how thankful I am to have the partnership. And as far as you moving to King City, I first heard about it from Dave. So Dave got to
I am not surprised at the least.
He's happy to have you as his neighbor. There's no doubt about it.
It's been a blessing for us.
Welcome, Sue.
So are there any other questions from anyone else? Any other council members?
I just have one question actually for Dr. Sue really quick. We spent a good chunk of money on 131st Street. And so we can actually leverage that money that we spent on another grant through Safe Routes to School. We have the potential to leverage those assets. So if you guys had an area around Deer Creek, do you have any particular recommendations? We're kind of looking at potential crossings at Beef Bend or something like that from your staff and perspective. Where would those be?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think at this point, you know, I would need to go back to staff and then see if we can find opportunities to come back into conversation with you around that. I think certainly BFEND would be a great place to start. I say that now, again, being a resident, the improvements that have been made along 131st, that's the route that I walk during the day. To try to take, you know, a half hour personal time just to kind of get my head clear and feel very safe. And I can see for our children, and I watch, you know, as we're all practicing the social distancing, physical distancing, you know, I watch families with kids on bikes and whatnot, and feeling very comfortable around that route. I know that there are many then come up 131st and they'll turn on to BFEND either east or west. And I think that would probably be our next target, would be along that area and providing, strategically providing, you know, lighted crossings, metered crossings, because our children like to use, when we're open, like to use Deer Creek as a play area. And so absolutely would be more than interested in having our folks, you know, connect with you and continue the conversation about where that, you know, where that might, the next stop might be.
Okay, that sounds good. That's those are great thoughts, and we look forward to engaging with you guys on that next step. Okay.
Mayor, I just have one quick question. And I guess first, just to say, as a parent of a first grader at Deer Creek, I really applaud as a consumer of the information that the district is sending out. I think you guys are doing an excellent job. And so as a parent in the school district, I really appreciate everything that's happening. I guess, Ben, if we were looking to engage as a former Lane County School Board student member, I really applaud the student leadership. And if we wanted to work on programming in the future, obviously post-COVID, what would be the best way to engage with? Would that be just to contact you to see if we can do some partnerships with through leadership with the students?
Yeah, I would be happy to connect you to the two co-presidents this year. I know they're working to train up the folks who will be taking over next year as the two presidents graduate. But I know they were working on a website. I'm not sure if it's up or not, but yeah, send me an email and I'd be happy to connect you to them.
Perfect, thanks.
And one other thing, I would love to believe that in our future, we will have some student involvement in council. You know, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but we certainly think that that's important. I know that Tigard has a student counselor, and that's an exciting thing, but there's no reason for every city not to be involved in that kind of activity, to give these children an opportunity to get involved in the city government, especially for us with the expansion that we're going to have going on. We would love to be able to have more student activity involved in that, trying to help design the future city that we're going to have as we build out toward Roy Rogers. So we need to work together on that and try to figure out how to make something like that happen. But I would love to be able to do that as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
When I was on the Tigard Council before we had a student member, we regularly had the president of the Tigard High School Youth Council came to our meetings every month, gave a presentation, and we were able to find out what was going on at the high school. I'm wondering if Ann might be able to help us get a student leader from Tualatin to come and make presentations monthly during the school year at our council meetings. The schools are open again.
Yeah, you all let me know what you'd like, or you know, students from which schools, and I'd be happy to connect them to the mayor or any counselors who are leading the effort. But I'm sure they'd be pleased. You know, they did this amazing survey work where they analyzed like thousands and thousands of data points about extracurricular participation that I know like the Chamber of Commerce was interested in hearing about. So they've got some cool stuff they could tell you about. You just let us know when and where, and we'll connect with you.
I would be glad to be the contact for that, because all of our young people go to Tualatin High School.
Sounds great. And just one other thing that just popped into my mind. Has there been any conversation? I'm thinking about the school boundaries. I mean, the district boundaries in terms of we have our kids going to, specifically for high school, our kids out of King City go to Tualatin High. We have Tiger that appears to be closer than Tualatin. And now we have Mountainside that is not that far away. Are there any, is there any conversation going about redefining the school boundaries or whatever the proper term is?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I don't need to tell you that's always a sticky wicket, because there are, winners and losers, or perceived so, regardless of the decisions that you make. Certainly with the opening of Art Rutkin, we will need to redefine the boundary relative to elementary schools, the mix, to take pressure off of Deer Creek and Alberta Ryder, and start to fill in Art Rutkin. As part of that, we have had preliminary, and I do mean preliminary, discussions around what are our opportunities to straighten, to the most of our ability, feeder patterns to the middle. The high schools provide, unfortunately, because of the way the Tualatin River splits the district, it is more challenging in the sense of both from an equity perspective as well as a racial perspective and economic perspective, to balance our populations, so that we do not unwittingly create a have and have not situation. So as we get closer to those, Mayor, we would absolutely love your thoughts as municipality about how you might want to participate as part of that larger conversation and thinking.
Right.
And we'll, as we get close to that, would love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, and I'm looking at Mike, and as we try to get to the numbers that we think we will get to as we develop 3,200 more units and in King City, and that's going to be a lot more students. That's going to be going from our existing boundary all the way to the west out to Roy Rogers. That's going to be a lot more students. We had talked early on about the possibility of setting aside some land for potentially another school, whether that be a junior high or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had about the future growth of King City and what that means and how that might influence the boundaries for high school students, and whether or not we're going to be able to support and come together on a potential site for another school. So Mike, this is kind of some of the stuff that we had talked about a little bit.
Well, all music to our ears, Mayor.
Mike, you have any input on that?
Yeah, well, we've definitely looked at areas in the expansion for potential growth of the school district. I think there's the Art Rygel school site up there off of April Lane. And I think that's what, 164th or 165th, somewhere right in there. But we were concerned about middle school or high school, considering we only really have, what is it, the 2 or 3 middle schools currently?
2.
3, yeah, that's what I thought, 3. And then we only have the 2 high schools, correct, Dr. Sue? Yeah, so we were worried if we're adding 3,500 units at 2.5 people per unit, we're potentially adding 6,000 to 7,000 people. And what does that look like at our schools, and what's that impact look like?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And I think we do work with a demographer out of Portland State University. And Maureen's giving me the stink eye down here on my right-hand side. And I'm getting there, Maureen. Just give me a minute.
I wonder what that means.
We do work with the demographer. And I think certainly we have a sense of, what he believes based on all the information that Portland State pulls together, what that might look like. But I do think there is opportunity, certainly, Michael, for us to come together and have conversation, look at that data, see how it squares with the data the city, King City has. And because I think it's going to take a number of pieces of data for us to really have a firm grasp. I know some demographers will say that the days of 2 and 3 children households are behind us, that at best you might, see, 1 to 1.5 children, whatever that equates to, coming out of households, which has a longer term impact, particularly when we look primarily at the kinder enrollment, the projected kinder enrollment, because that rolls through for 13 years. So I think as you get firmer on your data, I would absolutely, enjoy a conversation, bringing King City to that conversation and putting all our data points together and see where we have, convergence. And then what do we think the next steps are?
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that. I mean, we all realize that this is a future conversation, but I don't think it's too soon to start this conversation. I mean, before we break ground, it's still going to be maybe 5 years away, but I think this is absolutely the right time to start thinking about what we are going to look like, what our needs are going to be 10 years from now.
Right there with you, Mayor.
Okay.
I just would like to jump in and say I'm so thrilled to hear in terms of your thoughtfulness around property and wanting to be part of that planning conversation, because you all know we're a bit landlocked at this point in terms of what the district boundaries look like. Mm-hmm. And so that's a very encouraging and exciting conversation to have. I don't see our growth leaning towards a 3rd comprehensive high school, right? I appreciate the concern around a tight middle school model, but also what are some of those creative opportunities to look at high school maybe differently, but excited you thinking that through in terms of where does King City look like in that long-term strategic thinking. And to Sue's point, I know last year or I start to lose time, I think it was 2019, it might have been 2018, as the announcement with growth was, we did have Portland State come back, relook specifically around King City. So I do want you to know, as Sue said, it's certainly been front of mind in terms of where our growth could be headed. So thank you for all that planning from our perspective. Greatly appreciated.
Okay. So Mike, I'm pretty sure that someone from the school district will be involved in our technical advisory team for the master planning and all of that. Is that what we have planned to do?
Yeah, so we will have some a stakeholders advisory committee and a technical advisory committee. And so we'd likely request or ask somebody from the local school district, Tigard-Tualatin School District, to be a rep for that TAC group, because then they're going to advise on, those demographics and population numbers and things of that nature, and what kind of needs that we're going to need for those things, so that we can try to stay ahead of the targets and make sure that we're meeting demands.
So Michael, I would point you in the direction of Tracy Rose, who is our Director of Community Relations. Okay. She truly drew short straw relative to boundary conversations and navigating the community. It falls in her portfolio, but she can then certainly direct you to the right, get the right people in the room for you, and make those connections.
Okay, now that sounds good. This is an exciting time for a lot of reasons, and I just appreciate everything that you guys are doing. And I hear a lot of good things about what the school district is attempting to do, and dealing with all the issues surrounding the challenges of trying to bring the numbers up for people of color and all of those kinds of things. And I commend you guys for the efforts that you're putting into it. So, any other questions or concerns?
I just wanted to ask Dr. Sue, if you could get a hold of me offline. Dave can give you my phone number.
Okay.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. You bet.
Anybody else? Well, thank you, Maureen, Tracy, Ben, and Dr. Sue.
Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay.
So our next step,
So
go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
do you want to go directly to the public forum now?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's what we ought to do. We have probably somebody online that may want to speak. So let's do that. We welcome public comment at this time. The council will be happy to receive your comment pertaining to items on the agenda, including questions, suggestions, complaints, and items for the future. Each person's time will be limited to 3 minutes. So do we have somebody? Where's Ronnie?
Let me run with this here a minute, Mr. Mayor. Okay. So everyone on the line, I'm going to unmute you. So it's going to unmute all. If you're not talking, can you do us a favor and just mute yourself so that way we don't get any static feedback or echo chambers going on here? That'd be awesome. All right.
Okay.
All right. So at this point in time, everybody should be unmuted, and you're welcome to mute yourself if you do not have anything to say. And what we're asking is that if you do have something to say, we do it one at a time and work our way through.
And keep in mind that you need to identify yourself and specifically give your address and that you're a King City resident and so on. So who do we have? Anybody?
I'd like to say something if I may.
Okay, please identify yourself.
Sure. My name is Edward Kroll, K-R-O-L-L. I'm actually not a King City resident, but Council President Jamie Fender invited me to this meeting so I can introduce myself.
Okay.
If that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Thank you again. My name is Edward Kroll, and I'm a candidate for political office. I'm running for an open seat on the Washington County Circuit Court bench. And due to the health crisis, I've been trying to meet as many people virtually as possible. I would have loved to come to one of your meetings in person. Jamie had invited me, but unfortunately that simply wasn't to be. And so she told me about this meeting, invited me to attend, and I appreciate hearing everything that King City is doing. I have quite a few friends who live in that area, and that means a lot to me. Just wanted to introduce myself very quickly and tell you who I am. I know I've only got 3 minutes and I won't take more than that, but it's rare to see a contested judicial election. Judge Keith Rains on the Washington County Circuit Court is retiring and not running for re-election to fill his seat. And I'm one of the candidates who is running. I'm very fortunate to have Judge Rains' endorsement as well as Jamie's and many others, including several mayors, Mayor Snyder, Mayor Lenahan, and Mayor Callaway of our neighboring cities, and many of our police organizations. My biggest priorities in running are to increase access to justice and community involvement, and that involves partnering with elected officials and city councilors such as yourselves and making the court more present in the community so that all of our residents, no matter their social, racial, or economic backgrounds, have access to the courts. Right now, the courts are often seen as someplace you don't ever want to be, and they're the bastion of oftentimes people who are well off and can afford counsel. Our court system needs to be more representative of our citizens, and as the son of an immigrant, I have a very good viewpoint into this, and I've taken people through our court system as individuals. I'm a former prosecutor in Multnomah County, and I do now personal injury and criminal defense and family law with a couple other lawyers in Hillsborough. And I would really much like to be your next circuit court judge. I know it's an awkward introduction, and my 3 minutes is almost up, but I'll give you our website, www.edwardkroll, EDWARDKROLL.com. You can learn more about me and see the list of people who've endorsed and agreed that this candidacy is the right thing for our next judge in Washington County. And if you want to reach out directly, I'm happy to take any questions one-on-one. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure meeting you. And thank you for visiting us. And we have the information and we can do a little more research.
Edward, can you give us
Kroll?
that website one more time?
Yes, certainly. It's www.edward, that's EDWARD, then my last name, Kroll, KROLL.com. So www.edwardkroll.com.
Awesome.
Mr. Kroll, if you could, this is Gretchen Diener. If you could give me a call, I'd appreciate it. I'd love to do some work for your campaign in my part of King City. You can find my phone number on the bar directory.
All right, good. Give me your last name again, please.
It's Buehner, Buehner.
All right, thank you, Ms. Buehner. I will give you a call later today or probably tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Do
Thank
we have
you.
anybody else?
I think we have Cindy here from Pride. Cindy and Kristen, do we have you guys here?
Yeah, this is Kristen. I'm here.
All right, cool. And then
Kristen,
I think
how are
you guys are next up, Kristen, when we get there. We're just not there yet.
Great. I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
I'm doing good. Okay. Did we have anybody else who wanted to speak in the public forum? Okay, if no one wants to speak, then we can mute all of those again.
All right, bear with me, everyone. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute everybody one by one, starting with our counselors, and then we'll go into Cindy and Eric and Kristen. Okay, we'll unmute you guys as well. So bear with me, everyone. How are we doing? Do we have everybody now?
I'm good.
Okay.
The chief is not, he's still muted.
Who else do we have?
Okay.
Okay, Peter, I'm going to unmute you.
And Michael is still muted.
Yeah, we'll let Michael in here in a minute. He's down here, a couple more on the agenda. So, counselors, you're unmuted. If you want to mute yourself, feel free. And then at this point in time, we'll talk a little bit about 8.1, which is the Pride Disposal franchise piece. Kristen's here, so she can kind of explain it probably better than I can, but I'll give you a brief update on my understanding of the situation. And then Kristen, Cindy, and Eric are on, and they can chime in as well.
Okay.
Essentially, right now, there's no ask on the table. What Pride is saying is that there's a chance that in the next quarter, that revenues will be less than what they are currently. And so with the reduction in commercial services, we might see a reduction in our franchise fee. And this would be the July one. Am I correct, Kristen? The July quarter? Kristen Leichner, can you hear me? Eric, can you hear me?
Cindy?
Michael, I don't know if you can hear me, but yes, that's what we're talking about is July.
Okay. And so, Cindy, I think the concept here is that with the reduction of services due to the COVID-19 situation, we may end up seeing a reduced overall revenue in that quarter, and that would correlate to a reduced overall franchise fee, right?
Right. There's kind of two things there. That would be, we're expecting that we'll see a reduced cash receipts, which reflects the reduced franchise fees, and that will just happen naturally. But what Kristen sent the email about is depending on what happens with overall business activities, what we were planting the seed for is the possibility of coming to you in the future and asking for the ability to defer that payment. Not that we're asking for it now, but depending on how much longer this goes on, whether that might be something that we would come and ask for. But just as a natural consequence of what's happening, likely that payment will be smaller because of the downturn in what we'll be seeing in our collections.
And this is Kristen. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Kristen,
Yes.
I got you.
Okay, so just to add on to that as well, in theory, if customers are slower to pay their bills, then we won't be receiving the cash. So that's why it will impact the amount of receivables we're collecting, and then that will impact our franchise fee. In theory, if people the following quarter are able to catch up on their bills, then you would see a higher franchise fee payment the following quarter. But to Cindy's point, at this point, we just kind of wanted to open up the conversation that depending on how many of those people can't pay their bills and for how long, it may have an impact to our ability to pay some of our bills, which is franchise fees are one of them. So.
Counselors, are there any questions at this time?
Well, I guess I better understand it now. My first reaction was, okay, you guys are being impacted because you're going to have less revenue coming in. Your revenue stream is going to be impacted. And naturally, that's going to impact your ability to pay your bills. I guess the only question I have is that, are you going to be able to take advantage of any state or federal support in order to prevent this inevitable situation from impacting your ability to pay us? You know, so
Yeah.
you know, I would love to be able to think that if there are programs available to you that would allow you to pay us as requested or required. Have you gone down that path, or do you know if those kinds of opportunities are going to be available to you?
Yeah, and we are exploring all of those options. We have currently applied for a PPP loan. We have not received word yet on whether or not that will be successful, and that could have a large impact on this entire discussion. But at this point, it's still an unknown for us.
So I guess the only thing I would say is that, okay, we appreciate you letting us know this, but I would love to hear the conversation that says we applied for these things. We have done everything within our power to prevent this from happening. And this is our last resort, that you are going to end up with the inability to pay us as agreed upon. And that's because everything else has failed. I'd like for us to be the last resort in terms of that reduction. I don't know about the rest of the council, but that's kind of my thoughts. I'd like to hear from you guys. Councilors? Mike, somebody?
I agree.
Yeah, and I think that makes the most sense, and I appreciate the fair warning. Obviously, everyone here is aware of the economic impact at every single level of all sectors. But I would echo what the mayor says, and that we appreciate the communication, and hopefully all avenues of resources are being investigated.
And we agree with that 100%. We just are trying to be upfront and not spring this on you at the last moment. And we agree, would be a last resort also. We would just rather bring this up early and not have to use it at all, rather than bring it up at the last minute.
Right.
I do appreciate that. Any other questions or concerns? So you will, how soon will you know, do you think, when do you think you'll come back to us with an update that makes more sense?
I'm struggling to answer that because I think there's so much uncertainty still about how long not only this situation will be in place with stay-at-home orders, but how long customers may be struggling to pay their bills due to layoffs and things like that that might be longer to recover from. So I think realistically, we would be able to have a better idea no later than mid-June, which is near the end of the next quarter, before the end of July payment is due. So we would, you know, maybe revisit this in June if necessary. I mean, we would give an update for sure, but but if we thought that there would be an ask involved, that we could address it in the middle of June.
That sounds fine. I appreciate the heads up, and I think that'll work for us. Mike, any thoughts on that approach?
Yeah, I would agree that we should know more here in a little while as we see how this unfolds. And that's just going to be riding out this COVID-19 situation and knowing that we're all going to have to be a little bit flexible as we move forward and understand that there's going to be bumps along the way. I think something that we all realize.
Yes. And so we all appreciate what you guys do, and you guys have been really great at communicating with us. We appreciate that. And I have total confidence that we'll be able to do what needs to be done collectively in order to see our way through this. Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm going to swap screens here really quick.
So there's no motion or anything that we need to do on that, right?
No.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so our next piece of business is 8.2, Royalty Court Street dedication. We're going to ask Peter Watts to chime in here. Peter, can you hear us? Can you talk?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Peter.
How are you guys?
Doing good.
You look good. So this is, again, whenever I'm with you guys, it's because we have a very unique situation, and this is one of them. We have a situation where part of the street that is known as Royalty Court was dedicated to the public in 1971. And essentially what was donated was one lot. So instead of a house being built on Southwest Royalty Parkway, that lot was dedicated to the city, which then would allow further development of what would be called Royalty Court. So what was dedicated was that the portion that serves, I will call them single family detached houses. And that happened in the 70s. And then later in the 80s, the condominium development was built, and is part of that, I'll call it driveway, was built to serve those condominiums, and they were built in 4 phases. In 1987, that HOA came to the city and said that they wanted to donate their driveway, the driveway serving those units, to the city, so that it could be a public street. The city had them prepare a quitclaim deed, and then they signed off on the quitclaim deed. The problem, though, is that you cannot quitclaim public right of way, and that's because that then would allow anyone to quitclaim a portion of a property to a city and then say, well, improve it. The only way in Washington County and in the state of Oregon that land can be dedicated to right of way is via a deed of dedication. And in this case, the deed of dedication wasn't prepared, and it wasn't recorded. And so we don't know whether the city attempted to record the quitclaim deed, and the county rejected it, and then it just got dropped, or whether the city never attempted to record the quitclaim deed. We don't have any of those materials, but we are in a situation where part of Royalty Court is a street, and part of Royalty Court is not a street. The portions that are the street are the portions that abut the single family detached homes. And then once you get into the Royalty Gardens HOA, they own that portion of the I called it in the memo, bridge. That's under their ownership. So they contacted city staff in earlier this year to talk about future maintenance needs. And when we looked into it, what we found was, according to the county's maps, that was owned by the HOA, not a city right away. And so it would be the HOA's financial responsibility to do those improvements, not the city's. The HOA then produced the documents from the 70s that dedicated that lot to the city for right of way. That lot would have been, one lot. And then the 1987 materials, and in looking and going through everything with Mike and Ronnie, it's hard to know why in 1987 they asked for a quitclaim deed, because all prior roads that have been dedicated in King City have been done with the deed of dedication. But for whatever reason, that's what they asked for, and that wouldn't get it done. There's as I said in the memo, there's a Luba case out of Deschutes County. That was a little bit different, a slightly different, but kind of analogous situation, in that one of the 3 steps necessary in order to dedicate public right-of-way didn't happen. In that case, the Luba board said that street was not a street, and also that the county would need to go through its regular process in order to dedicate that. So not 100% analogous, because that was a county road, and this would be a city street, but the outcome is essentially the same. What Luba said is, you have to do all 3 things. They have to be willing to give it to you. You have to accept it, and then you have to record that deed. And if any one of those things hasn't happened, then it's not public right away. It hasn't. So they have come back to us and said that they are interested in donating that to the city for as public right of way. Before we went through and figured out what the application process for that would be and what would constitute a complete application, we wanted it's both. They're represented by council. It's both in their interest and in city staff's interest, just because we do have a relatively small staff, to gauge whether that's something that the council is interested in pursuing.
Okay, so in order to get this resolved.
Mayor?
Yes.
I do have a public comment from Barry O'Connor, a recording dated this morning at 11:51. Forgive me, I don't know his address off the top of my head, but he is the president of the Royal Garden condominium, and I'll play the message now. Let me know if you can't hear it. Give it a minute, it's loading.
Yes, my name is Barry O'Connor, and I'm president of Royal Gardens Condominium Association. And I see on the agenda this afternoon there is supposed to be an item under new business dealing with Southwest Royalty Court. responsibility, or words to that effect. I would like to mention or ask a question.
Hold on, it froze.
Question to the city's attorney, if in his preparation of a
Froze again.
Yeah, I'm working
Yes,
on it.
my name is Barry O'Connor, and I'm president of Rural Gardens Condominium Association. And I see on the agenda this afternoon there is supposed to be an item under new business dealing with Southwest Royalty Court responsibility, or words to that effect. I would like to mention or ask a question to the city's attorney, if in his preparation of a copy of a draft memorandum I received, if he ever referred to ordinance number 55. And let me read the header for that. An ordinance accepting lot 28, block 15, King City number 3, now known as Southwest Royalty Court, as a city street, and taking jurisdiction thereof for public and municipal purposes. This, I guess, was a area that had not heretofore been subject to full jurisdiction control of the city, and it mentions the council finds this lot has been dedicated to public use in a deed dated November 22nd, 1971, and filed for record by the Departments of Records of Washington County, Oregon, November 26th of that year. And the council finds that said lot had heretofore not been subject to full jurisdiction.
And I believe that is it on that.
Right, and so looking at that, only a portion of what is now Royalty Court was dedicated. So what was dedicated was the portion that abuts the single-family detached residences, and I think the point that he believes that Royalty Court itself was constructed, and then development occurred, to the best I can tell, after it. And what happened was that Royalty Court happened in phases. So the portions that he is talking about were not dedicated to the city. The only portion that was dedicated is the portion of Royalty Court that ends with the last detached single-family house. So that is the area that was dedicated to the city in 1971, and then the condominiums were later built, and again they wanted the city to take over jurisdiction of the driveways connecting to their parking lot, but because they prepared a quitclaim deed instead of the deed of dedication, that didn't happen. So according to the county's property records, about 25% of what is now Royalty Court was dedicated to the city in the early 70s, and that was it.
So with all of this being said, what is the most viable solution to this scenario? What's the solution?
Well, there's one of the reasons that we wanted to bring it to you is that in part because it potentially sets some precedent. So a lot of times with apartment complexes, particularly apartment complexes that are a rectangle and have units on both sides, that even if the driveway that serves them goes to multiple units, it's a private driveway and not a city street. And the reason for that is because there's no connectivity there. So once you leave the city, the public right-of-way portion of Royalty Court and you're heading east, that portion of the street only serves the Royalty Court Condominium Association. You know, it's the same is true of a driveway to a single family house or a driveway to an apartment complex. It's the same as this. So usually that is the responsibility of an association to maintain their infrastructure. This infrastructure would be particularly expensive to maintain because there's a bridge that connects the phases of Royalty Court to each other. So there's a portion of street, then there's, and if you look at the aerial, portion of this, there's the street, then there's a bridge that crosses water, and then there's some more, I guess driveway is better. There's driveway, then there's a bridge that crosses water, and then there's driveway. So those are really the two reasons we wanted to take this to you. First, because, you know, if we were to accept their driveway and say that's a city street, I think we would have future apartment complexes that get built in the next phase that would say, well, why aren't you accepting our driveway that goes to different apartments? And then the second is that this is, if there's any major work that needs to happen, and the reason the city was contacted originally is because they expected that there'd be future maintenance, that will be borne by the city instead of the homeowners association.
So to try to help me understand, so it sounds like, first of all, the city should have never gone into this ordinance. This ordinance shouldn't have been passed based on this quick deed, and it really was something that shouldn't have been really decided way back then. But since we had the quick deed and the ordinance passed, now we are in a situation where we have apparently some responsibility now to say, well, it wasn't done properly, but what do we do now to resolve this? Is that kind of where we are?
Technically,
we are at a situation where you have you're under no legal obligation to take over the driveway. So, I mean, I don't understand. It's not appropriate for me to ask, you know, did they do this purposefully because they did not want it, but they did not want to say no. But I mean, essentially what happened is they kicked the can down 33 years, and whether they intended to take it or didn't intend to take it, they didn't take it. Mm-hmm. And now 33 years later, we're having this discussion about whether, you know, city resources, you know, the city has a transportation system plan, we'll have a future one. And, you know, the question is this would not be in that because this isn't a city street. So the question, I guess, is do you want to make it a city street or not?
Okay. So what I want is to do the right thing. And whatever that right thing is, if the city truly should accept the responsibility, I want to know if that's where we're headed. And if the city isn't, the right decision is not for us to accept the responsibility, how do we make that clear? And what then happens with this little stretch, this bridge does that mean the HOA or whoever is responsible in that complex becomes fully responsible for it? Or does that set up some sort of legal battle where they still, based on this document, this ordinance 55, does it become more of a legal battle than we want to be involved in? So, Mike, you were going to say something. I'm just trying to figure out how we move forward and do the right thing.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that the way that this was done, firstly, it was never done properly. They did it through a resolution, not an ordinance. They filed the wrong kind of, they didn't even file the deeds. They just kind of went through this deed process. So there's a number of missteps along the way. Secondly, they didn't try to secure additional right-of-way to meet the city standards. So if we did take this on, it'd basically be us maintaining somebody's driveway, and we don't do that anywhere else. And unless we had some sort of connection to the surrounding areas, and I have a map, but I don't know how, just to bring it to everyone's attention, but there's no outlet for that road, and there's not enough right-of-way to get around it. So we have property to the south that may develop, but we don't necessarily have enough right-of-way here to connect it. And we can't, now we could go to them and say, okay, well, in order for us to accept this chunk of road, we need a 50-foot right-of-way that's going to be provided by the HOA or the apartment complex, and you guys are going to have to remove these garages that are in the way. That would be, in my opinion, a solution that would work possibly for both parties. But it's also a solution I'm sure that they wouldn't want to do, because it would end up taking their dead end street and making it actually useful for city purposes, but until we know what's going in next door to the south where Randall's bike shop is, we can't really determine how this could potentially connect. Right now, I just don't see what the benefit for the city would be to adopt this as a road.
Okay, so if that's the case, to try to prevent from continuing conversations on this, if we say no, there's no way the city should or wants to take over this section, then what do? They need to have some work done on the bridge, and they're trying to avoid having to foot the bill for it. Basically is what it sounds like to me. Yeah. And but if that's the right thing for us to say because of all the right of way and all these other things, it's just not something that the city can or should take on at this point. That whatever has to happen to that bridge needs to be the responsibility of the HOA. That's where that piece of property is. Does that close this case and move on, or do they still come back and say, well, we don't agree, and then what? How do we close it? What I want to know.
Well, I'd say we offer the ultimatum that if they want to provide the additional right-of-way through their driveway to meet city standards for a road right-of-way so that we can actually access some additional property, then it might be in our interest. Peter, would you agree to that? And Gretchen, I see your hands up.
Right. It's I'm always reluctant to accept a substandard street, and if you look at the street, and we had the city engineer look at it, it narrows, and if the public benefit, I guess, would be allowing access to the other properties, so that the property to the south of it and perhaps the property to the north of it that would that then would have access through King City, because it would be, I think very difficult for us to argue that there should be another development, particularly if it's dense, loading onto Pacific Highway West. So I think if they were willing to do that, then that would make a couple of parcels developable and potentially bring in extra revenue to the city, et cetera. If not, then we're taking on a burden that is normally borne by a HOA. Every condo complex that I can think of, or is generally their driveway is their responsibility, just like the driveway to your home would be your responsibility. And so I guess I would be reluctant I would not recommend that the city take this on unless additional benefits are provided.
So then isn't that our answer? Isn't our answer said that the only way we are willing to, the only way we can take on this responsibility if these things happen, and short of that, the city can't accept any responsibility for what needs to be done on this bridge. I don't know exactly what wording that would be, but it says that the only way we can or are willing to take on any responsibility would be with these specific things to occur. Is that the answer?
That's my opinion.
Yeah, and what that exaction would need to be, I think we could work with the city engineer and figure that out.
Right. That to me is the way to go. Now, Gretchen, you had something you wanted to say.
Well, I have a couple of questions of Peter. Has there been any effort to contact the owners of the adjacent properties, i.e., is there any interest in development at any time in the near future? And B, aren't there some wetland issues there in terms of building a road to city standards that might cause a problem in doing that?
Yeah, if we were to rebuild that to city standards, I think it would be, anytime you're building over water, it's more expensive than building on dirt. Mike would have a better idea than I do of if there's interest by an adjacent property owner in developing.
Well, the bridge is, I can talk a little bit about the cost. There's a question regarding cost. I think we've done a quick estimate on what it would take to maintain or bring it up to some level, do the inspection, those sort of things. I think we're about 200,000 for those. As for potential development to the north and south, to the north, I believe, is the dentist's office. And that gentleman's been trying to sell or develop his property for some time. To the south is Randall's bike shop. And there's a for sale sign on Randall's right now. Okay. So both have access currently off of frontage roads on Highway 99.
So they wouldn't need to have access to this road.
Not necessarily, but if they were to develop, I would recommend, that they do a connection, because this provides an internal connection. Mm-hmm. If we had the right of way. If we don't have the right of way, then the conversation's completely academic and does us no good.
Well, that's why I'm just asking the realistic need for having the connectivity.
So wouldn't it be prudent then to put together some wording to say that we're not going to entertain doing anything with this unless these specific things were to occur, and have the council review that for approval, and then move from there?
I can certainly put that together.
Yeah, I would think, not unless someone disagrees with me, I think that that's the only way we can get off the dime and move forward with this. Anybody?
No, I mean, you know, I certainly empathize with them as an HOA and the predicament that they're in, but at the same time, I have my personal doubts about you know, the intentions of the council back then. Like, the city makeup was extremely different, and I think the approach of how to handle city business back then was very different. And so while I empathize, I don't necessarily want to take action of the city council from 1987 as kind of the shiny beacon of what we should be doing. So I think that's the most sensible. And you know, I'm also concerned, right? We know of all the other issues with some of the other HOAs and roads and sewers, and I would, you know, it's just a difficult predicament. I don't think it benefits us to take this on unless they can bring the road up to the standards that we need it to be at.
Okay. All right. So do we need a motion to go in that direction, and unless there's further conversation?
No, I think that it sounds like we have council consensus, and that should be enough for us to put together language for your review. If you like the language or want to alter the language after we've drafted it, then we, you know, that's probably the time when you would take a vote.
Okay. All right. Let's do that. Does anybody disagree with that approach?
No.
No, I think that's sensible.
Okay. All right. So do we need a motion to accomplish that?
No.
No? Okay. Now, what I would really like to do, we have Mike, who has been sitting there patiently listening to all of this other stuff. Can we flip-flop? Can we do Mike next and then do Ernie afterwards?
Mike, there's an open city council seat.
Yeah, hang on. Let me unmute Mike real quick. Oh, he's got it. Mike, you're on.
Thank you. I don't know. Would that be a conflict of interest, though?
We can waive it.
So
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Let's do that. I appreciate your patience. You've been listening to all of this other stuff, and I appreciate you being here to give us an update on what's going to happen potentially with the Skyhawk program this summer.
Well, I appreciate it, and I would love to say that I appreciate you moving me up because I have all these other things I need to get to, but that is definitely not the case right now.
All right.
But so thank you for having me, and I'll keep it brief. So for anybody that doesn't know, I own a local Skyhawks Sports Academy franchise. We had set up a partnership to do some youth sports camps this summer here in the King City Community Park. And obviously with everything going on, there's a whole lot of questions around what we can and can't do. And I'll just share. So our organization has locations across the country and internationally. And since COVID-19 broke out, we've completely ceased operations. We've set up some resources online and some things like that for families to be able to use those resources, but you know, it's all free, and our company as it exists right now is very much on the brink because we have zero revenue and do not have any kind of timeline on when we're going to be able to perform our camps again. And so what does that look like for King City and really all of the areas that I run camps and run our business? We really don't know. I would love to say I had any information as well. We are looking at this on a daily basis. I work with Parks and Rec and city departments from Forest Grove all the way down to McMinnville and Woodburn and across pretty much the whole metro area. And at this point, we are just going with the state recommendations, the CDC, and really just playing it by ear. So I can tell you all the things that we've put into place to make our camps safer and sanitizing and all that. But quite frankly, to be honest, I could not comfortably say that I could run any of my camps and not, put people at risk for transmission. It's just not possible. We run camps for, starting at 4 years old, up to 12 years old. Even if we enforce social distancing, even if we, we clap instead of high five and do all these great things, it's just, there's no way that I could look anybody in the eye and tell them that, yes, we can, maintain these, the required social distancing and what we need to do to keep everybody safe. We just can't. And so we still have all of our camps in King City and in other areas planned and scheduled for June through August as of right now, and are really playing that by ear. We are doing no advertising whatsoever. Normally right now we start really ramping up in March and April to get our summer camp registrations going, and we have not done that purposefully because we don't want to get a bunch of people to sign up for camps and then have to cancel them. But people are still able to seek them out themselves and register for camp. So we have not shut any of that down yet. But the first summer camp that's been affected, so we have canceled everything through the end of May and all of the locations that we run camps, because we do run some spring camps. But the city of Tigard, so Tigard Parks and Rec, we did cancel June. They were the first organization I work with that has canceled the month of June.
Right.
And honestly, I'm just really waiting at this point for that to happen kind of across the board, because each day that goes by that we don't really have any kind of timeline in this in general for all of us. I just, again, I do not see a way for us to be able to do our camp safely and not put people at risk. And honestly, we want to be a part of the solution, and we want to help people fight the cabin fever and get their kids active as much as anybody. Me personally, from a business standpoint, but we do not want to be part of the problem. And so at this point, we haven't canceled summer camps, from a long story short, but I don't see a way forward in the near term unless things change.
One of the things that I would suggest to you, based on Governor Brown's news conference yesterday on reopening business, one of the things that she said, in order to determine the reopening of businesses, that she wanted a coalition of businesses to give input on how this would work, how your specific business might be able to reopen with some specific requirements in place. Are you aware of that conversation? And do you have or need information on how to become part of that? Because I think it would be vitally important for you and your organization to be part of that conversation as quickly as you can, because of the uniqueness of what you're trying to do. So people can say, well, if you do these specific things, and they're talking about the health authorities and all of these people that are supposed to be involved in that conversation for Governor Brown and the team to roll out a reopening. So I don't have anything specific that I can give you right now, but that's worthy of some research to find out how you can be part of that conversation.
No, I appreciate it. I was actually, I sat in on her entire briefing yesterday. And we actually do have a plan to try to be a part of that from not just myself, but actually some of the folks higher up in the company are kind of trying to inject ourselves in where we can to have a voice really in all of the areas that we do business.
Yeah.
But yes, so I appreciate that. Really the things that we can do, we can limit. Really the biggest thing we can do is we can limit class size. We can limit the amount of people that are there. But there's no way for us to have 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds running around and say they're not going to be interacting with each other, and they're not going to be sharing a basketball and that type of thing. It's just not possible. So we're going to follow all the regulations, and really we want to be a part of the solution. And so at this point, again, we haven't fully canceled anything, at least as far as what I can control, but we're definitely on hold. And you know, we're staffing, and we plan, we're ready for summer, let's say, if we're able to do so. But you know, not looking good right now.
Okay, well, we appreciate everything that you're doing. We love the program. We're excited about it. You know, but first and foremost, you know, we have to make sure that we keep everybody safe. That's our goal. That's our goal as a city, and I can see that that's your goal as well. And we'll just have to stay connected, stay in conversation, and don't hesitate to call upon us to give us any kind of feedback on what you might want to do and how we might be able to help. But we will get through this. If nothing happens this summer, it'll be because of the virus and because of the virus only, but we will respect it, okay? So I appreciate you being here, Mike. Do we have any questions or concerns from the rest of the council? Okay. All right. Well, Mike, thank you. We'll let you go and appreciate you being with us, okay?
Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have next up, we have Ernie. Ernie, thank you for being kind and letting Skyhawk Michael go.
No problem. All right, so I have the National Police Week 2020 proclamation.
Mm-hmm.
And you wish for you to read that, correct, Mike or Ronnie?
Sure.
Okay. To recognize National Police Week 2020 and to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. Whereas there are more than 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the King City Police Department. And whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officer Memorial Day, and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the Police Department of King City, Oregon play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of King City. And whereas it is vital that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of the members of the King City Police Department, and that members of the King City Police Department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the rights and dignity of all citizens. Whereas the members of the King City Police Department unceasingly provide a vital public service. Now, therefore, the Mayor, Ken Gibson of King City, Oregon, call upon all citizens of King City and upon all professional, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 10th through the 16th, 2020 as Police Officer Memorial Week, a week that all of our citizens may join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. I further call upon all citizens of King City, Oregon to observe May 15th, 2020 as Police Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their communities or have become disabled in the performance of their duty. And let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. Witness therefore, and unto my hand, the seal of King City, Mayor Ken Gibson.
Okay, very well done. It's a very important thing, and we fully support it. We just need, thank you, Ernie.
Yep.
We need a motion to adopt this proclamation.
I move to adopt the proclamation. Was it numbered? National Police Week 2020 proclamation.
Second.
What's that, Gretchen?
Second.
Be seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Do roll call, Mike.
Sure. Councilor Paulson?
Aye.
Councilor Choli.
Aye.
Councilor Boehner.
Yeah, aye.
Councilor Platt.
Aye.
Councilor Fender.
Aye.
Mayor Gibson.
Aye.
6-0. Did I miss anybody?
Hey, Chief.
Who's that?
Can you have, sorry, it's Jamie. Or could you have Brian give me a shout so we can brainstorm a little bit about ways that we can socially responsibly observe the week and the day? I'll reach out to him, but if you think about it, have him reach out to me. We'll come up with some ideas for social media.
Okay.
Councilor Jamie Fender, I will be sending out a press release here in a couple of days after legal reviews it and management has reviewed it.
Perfect.
I'll send it to you too.
Thank you.
All right.
Ronnie, would you send that to me and I'll forward that to our email network?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. Just wave.
Hi. How are you?
Okay.
Okay. So next up, we have a discussion regarding a possibility of a Zoom town hall that would engage the residents of King City to be able to have a discussion with me and the rest of the council. So what do we think? Jamie, you want to talk about this a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think, hang on one second, please go and shut the door. One thing that so there's kind of two formats that I've seen a lot of the town halls recently. Zoom is certainly one possibility. Right, we have the capacity for 100 people to be on the line. I think that works. The other possibility, both Representative Neron and Representative Kruzak did kind of a telephonic one where there's a telephone call that goes out to everyone, and then it prompts this message saying, if you want to listen to the town hall, press 1 and get on the line. The feedback, I think, at least that I've been hearing, is that the Zoom is a little better, and there's a little bit more participation about that. I think, you know, I know that our city council meetings are not well attended by the general population of our city,
right.
But I also think highlighting and organizing a opportunity for people to specifically discuss COVID-19 and the city's response and kind of going forward would be important and more well attended. So I would support doing it. I think it's I think it would be really beneficial.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I was going to throw my 2 cents worth. We had almost 150 people at my brother-in-law's funeral that we did on Zoom this weekend, and it worked very, very well.
Well, I'm confident in Zoom. I think it's a tool that we're learning to use, and it does work. And when it fails, it only fails because of equipment issues on the individual's parts. That's, and we need to work out those little bugs, when we're in a situation where mics aren't working and those kinds of things. It's not the system. We know that. So it's just a matter of us, those users, figuring out how to use it in advance, using whatever tutorial is available, and I'm confident that it would work. Now I have a different question. Really, I think this is a good thing to do, and I think for the entire council to be available to do it. I don't want it to be just me and Jamie. I would like for the council to be involved so that people recognize and know that they're being represented by all of us to be able to field questions along those lines. So how you get the word out, how do you advertise it in order to make it a reality for so many people? I don't know how many people from original King City, the KCCA, will be able to participate They have the option of phone in if they can't do the video. So I think it's a good idea. The other question that I have, I've been longing for quite some time to have a conversation, a meeting with the HOA presidents. And I think there's some benefit in that for them to be another vehicle for people to get questions answered. And we just have not been able to pull that together. Maybe this is a better opportunity to say, HOA presidents, we're going to have a call so that we can all get on the same page on what the city is attempting to do. Just like these emails that we've got, Mike, regarding, and one came from an HOA president that said that they don't think that personal distancing is being adhered to, that people are walking around the neighborhood and doing things that make the residents uncomfortable. We need to talk about where our limits are. Mike and I worked with Peter, and we got some legal language that we want to use in order to respond to those kinds of emails. But I think by having a conversation with the HOA presidents so they know what we're doing and we know what their communities are going to be faced with would be ideal. So if we can pull that together along with the town hall, I think it would be of great benefit to us.
Mayor, I'd even go so far to say is that in order for us to even get participation in the town hall, we really need the HOA presidents to push out the information, because most what I can say in just, you know, working on the social media side and messaging on behalf of the city in my role as council, but also in the messaging in the foundation separately, right? What I am finding is the conduit through the HOAs is how information is getting put out to most of the residents within each HOA, and we simply don't have a good conduit into them. And so I think, you know, Ronnie, myself, Mike, KCPD, right? Everyone's working really hard to try to get messaging out, but there's a sense from some HOA residents that they're just not receiving it. And part of it, you know, so I'd almost be, you know, I don't know if it makes sense to do a back-to-back Zoom, right, with just us and the HOA presidents, and then open it up to a town hall, right, just after, or do, you know, 1 week just the HOA presidents, followed by the next week a big town hall. But well, I think you're right. I think it's critical to get the HOA presidents.
This is where, and I think this is probably, it needs to be the HOA presidents. All of them have communications with their residents, all of them. And I think they would be a great tool to communicate the town hall opportunity that's going to be coming up. We got other things that we are doing that the HOA presidents need to be aware of. We need to have a conversation with them about what the city is doing and to try to get on the same page with these things.
Agreed.
So I've got people bombarding me with questions as I walk about the trees being removed. And that's an HOA thing, you know, so.
Wow. Mayor, a message went out on Nextdoor saying the city decided what trees went in and decided what trees are coming out. So there's some misinformation, which is why you're probably getting bombarded with it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, the problem is that they have a mixture of trees. Some are owned by technically by the landowner, and some are owned by the city. They can't just go out and remove every tree that's owned by the city without city approval. And for it to garner city approval, it needs to meet certain criteria.
Exactly.
So we went out with their landscaper and did a site tour and reviewed a number of the trees and illustrated to the landscaper on what qualifies for the removal of a tree. It needs to be doing some sort of damage to some infrastructure product, like a water line, a sewer line, a foundation of a house, something to that effect, where we can justify the removal of a mature street tree.
That's absolutely. So what they've done this week is they're removing trees that are on the property. Okay, those are trees that had the blue ribbon on them. The ones that have the pink ribbon on them are street trees. And as I've explained to some people, those are the ones that are the responsibility of the city, the ones that are curb trees, and that there's no decision to remove those yet because it hasn't met the criteria of what the city says it needs to be. So without diving too deep into the tree removal piece, what I would really like to do is to say, let's try to get these HOA presidents together for a Zoom meeting to talk about several different things and also to roll out the possibility of a town hall meeting. Can we do that?
Yes, can.
Go ahead, Gretchen.
Okay, I can speak to Garden Villa. I know that the board has the emails of each one of the 218 units, and they have regular correspondence going back and forth across that email chain. So that would be a very easy way to get a hold of the folks in Garden Villa who actually do attend. There's usually about 50 people at every one of their board meetings. So okay. It's very active.
And we just need to help educate the HOA presidents. You know, what are we doing? We're in this thing together. Dave, you're in the same situation. You know that there's contact with all of the people within the Highlands through email, or most of them, but we haven't had any contact with the president of the Highlands HOA. So let's try to organize this as quickly as we can so that it's not a huge delay to start trying to figure out how we can help them, get them to help us do a town hall that will be effective.
Agreed.
Okay. So
and would you like the president of the Highlands HOA to contact you?
Well, what I would like to do is, if Ronnie can help us with this, first of all, I need to have the list of the contacts, okay? I don't know, maybe you already sent it to me. I don't know. If you send it to me again to try to organize, and I will try to participate in the organization, in organizing that Zoom call so that we can get this thing up and running. And I will put together a basic agenda on what we need to talk about, and not having it be a free-for-all. We don't want that, but we do want to say that, you know, these are some of the things that we think are important, that the city is involved in, and this communication needs to improve, that kind of thing. So Ronnie, how can you help me?
Yeah, I can help you set that up. I just need a time frame. That's about it. And okay. Then I do have some contact for HOAs. There are some of the smaller ones, like Arden Villa, I think it's called, or Arden Village. Their president, I can't ever get a hold of them, and the company that runs it, they don't ever contact me back. Okay. The other one that I'm having trouble with is River's Edge. I don't know who their contact is.
Where is
anymore.
that?
Oh, that's the apartment complex?
No, so Arden Villa is the newer one over off of 131st. And then the River's Edge is off of Fisher Road.
Okay. All right, well, let's do what we, go ahead, Mike. Oh, let's do what we can. Give me what you have, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Valley.
All right. Okay, so it's a work in progress, and we'll get this thing going, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Chief. Oh, Dave, yes.
Jamie, anything that you would like to get information out on to the Highlands, if you just forward that to me, I can put it right on our network.
Perfect. I have an email
So
to send shortly. So.
Very simple. So.
Great.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Sounds like a good deal. Okay. So we'll try to get this set up as quickly as we can. with the proper contacts, okay? Chief, you're on.
All right, a couple things just real quick. The fire chief earlier had mentioned about call loads being down, and we kind of are in the same mode where we're at normal as far as call load goes, if not just a little bit below, as is, a lot of Washington County has just been status quo, so that's been really good. And the second thing, Mike, did you have it? I'd sent it. It's the MOU.
The MOU that you just put in. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can pull that up.
Okay. He's going to try to pull up an MOU, but it's a memo of understanding that deals with the COVID-19 between all the law enforcement agencies in Washington County, where if, and I think it would affect us here more than anywhere else, would be if, knock on wood, we had an officer or two go down due to being ill, and where we could ask for help, where we could bring in some resources from another agency to help police the city.
Oh, okay.
That's what Mike is popping up there. It has been reviewed by Peter, and without any changes that were there. So it's there for you to read, but basically that's what it's a voluntary thing where if we sit there and, except if we went down an officer or two, that we could ask for an agency to help us and with some coverage.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
If I'm going too fast, let me know.
Well, my speed reading skills aren't that good,
Huh. Let me know if you want me to go back.
Okay.
Peter, did you have anything that you wanted to chime in on this? Any concerns that you might have?
That seems pretty straightforward to me from what I've read so far.
Yeah, it's basically just an agreement to work together for the most
Right.
part.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. And so if you, if the council could potentially authorize Ernie to sign on behalf of the King City Police Department, I think we'd be good to go.
So we need a motion.
I move that the city council authorized Ernie to sign our signature line on the Washington County Law Enforcement Providers COVID response memo.
Second.
All in favor, roll call.
All right. Councilor Ocholi.
Aye.
Councilor Paulson.
Aye.
Councilor Platt.
Aye.
Councilor Boehner.
Aye.
Councilor Fender.
Aye.
Mayor Gibson.
Aye.
All right.
All right, so approved.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Well, Ernie, I have a couple for you.
Okay.
It looks like there was additional conversation regarding this early release program for prisoners. And basically it looks like that's going to die, where Governor Brown said the timing isn't good to do anything like that. Plus, they don't have the support of parole officers and so on to be able to even do what they're talking about doing. And they're faced with the potential of having to even furlough some of those very people that would be involved in that program. So, and we were prepared as mayors to have a Metropolitan Mayors Consortium letter to Governor Brown voicing our dissatisfaction with the idea and to make it clear that we were not going to support it. But it doesn't look like that's necessary now because of the decision. Are you on the same page with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So that's a good thing. Also, have you heard any complaints or conversations surrounding the sound of gunfire? I mean, I think it was maybe a day or two ago, it was into the night. I don't even know if it was gunfire, but it was some.
It's a farm cannon.
What? Oh, okay.
It's like a propane cannon that's out in farm fields to discourage wildlife if they've just planted whether it's grass or weed or whatever is being out there off of Roy.
Oh, okay.
And stuff, but that's what we've gathered that it's all has to do with that.
Okay, all right. That's makes sense to me. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Ernie?
Yes, sir.
What do you do now in the case of having to make physical contact with people? How do you deal with that?
So what we basically deal with is that they have the PPE gear where I've got the rubber gloves, the masks, the goggles, the glasses that they wear. And then we also, if we have to go into in a situation where it's maybe somebody that's ill, we also have a little suit that they can wear if they've got to go in and deal with somebody on a medical call, if they have the time to be able to put that on. And then with actually having to latch onto somebody, say take somebody into custody, the jail is operating on very strict guidelines where we are citing and releasing almost everybody. And so there's never going to be a time where, well, there'll be a few. We've had a couple that have been transported out to the jail, but we just take the precautions that we can where they wear their PPEs, and then we just work hard on being able to disinfect the vehicles or gear. And then they've also been advised to bring another uniform to work in case they have to, they do get in contact, or if we're in a scuffle with somebody, they can change out of their gear.
Very good. Good. Okay. All right. So one of the other things, Ernie, before you go, you said the calls have been basically flat, normal. So you haven't seen any rise in domestic violence. There was a news report the other night on one of the news channels that said that they were seeing a region-wide tick up in domestic violence.
Yeah, not in our area.
Okay, all right, that's good news. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, all right, Mike. Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you.
All right, I thought I'd just give a quick update on where we're at with the TSP and the master plan. So far, RFP is out for the master plan. I believe the final for submittal is later this week. We have the TSP is underway, and we're expecting to get rolling on that. Of course, our public engagement timeline has all been pushed back, so we'll likely attack the public engagement a little bit later in the year, but for the most part, everything is moving ahead. What we're doing is all the projects in the background that we can get done, all the report writing and all the information gathering that we can, and going from that and extrapolating that later as we form up the stakeholders and technical advisory committees to start evaluating this on a public forum once we're released to do so. We are anticipating that we'll be able to do that later this summer and into the fall. If for some reason the social distancing continues all through the summer and through the fall, then we'll probably have to rely on Zoom meetings, online surveys, and other online interactions to address the public information components that are required as a function of our transportation system plan and master planning efforts. But so far, we're moving ahead with those. We're in the midst of union negotiations, as you're aware of. We have a meeting later this month with them. We'll probably end up doing it via Zoom as well. Otherwise, I think the budget was set yesterday or approved by the budget committee yesterday. So we're pretty good on that front. And looking forward to the next fiscal year on what we can do. We just have a few admin things to take care of here and there. Operations here in the city are running at about half speed, I would say, because of the office being shut down. But we're still here. We're still taking permits. We're still processing permits. We're still doing all the admin work that we do on a daily basis, and trying to provide as much service as we can. The police are still out every day doing their daily duties and constantly patrolling the city to ensure everyone's safety out there. So overall, it's pretty much business as usual. And there's actually, it seems like there's more on our plate in the area, in the arena of information. So there seems to be just an abundance of updates and daily information intake that has to be processed and kept up with. And that has been that has been unexpected. You know, you'd think with the downtime, you'd have more opportunity to get stuff knocked out that's been stacking up, but it seems like we're drowning in information. And just there's also some applications for grants and funding. The House Bill 2001-2003 grant applications out right now. Keith and I have been working on that, predominantly Keith. We just sent over another version that we have to review and get off to DLCD this week. We just recently found out about the safe routes to school, and that's going to be a condensed timeline as well into next month to try to get that application out the window or out the door as well. So that's my update on where we're at and what we're doing. We're expecting to see some reductions in some franchise fees. We're trying to provide as much information to our businesses and residents as possible. Stimulus checks should be hitting everybody's bank account this week.
I got mine today.
I got mine today.
Good. So those hopefully will provide a little bit of relief, get people over the hump. Yeah, as you know, unemployment's at an all-time high, but our hope is that once the all clear signal is sounded, that we'll be able to start returning back to norm and back to work and get things going again.
Okay. Well, Mike, I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. You know, you guys are keeping this ball rolling, and I know it's far from being business as usual. And you're absolutely right about the amount of information that's coming in, daily updates, and 2 or 3 conference calls, video calls a day. I want to stay on top of them. I don't want to miss anything. And we just had a WCCC meeting virtual on Monday, and I did forward you that TD information.
Okay. Yeah, I received it.
So, that I forwarded to you. So we're doing well. I've got a lot of feedback from the community that says they appreciate what we're doing and how we have managed the city. There are only a few people who are dissatisfied with the social distancing or the personal distancing that's going on. So kudos to you and Ronnie and the rest of the team, because you guys are really keeping things going. And Ernie, your team, they're doing a great job out there, communicating with the people. So,
and if you guys haven't been down to the park, I'd like to give a shout out to Dave, who's been building that structure down there single-handedly. So,
yeah,
good.
Okay.
Looking pretty good.
Yeah, I walked down there yesterday and interrupted him for a while he was trying to work. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mike. All right, let's go around the horn. Gretchen, you have anything?
I'm attending the policy committee meetings, and the first one for the Finance and Tax Committee was last week. It was mostly a brainstorming session, looking at what happened in the last legislative session. I will report further later. And the Transportation Committee is meeting for the first time next Monday.
Okay, all right, thank you. Micah?
We had a virtual CBDG meeting last week for public comment on some of the plan. It was a productive meeting. I don't have much more to report. Unfortunately, I also have to go.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for being here, okay? And we will, listen, we will adjust the time. Micah, what do you think, you know, for the next meeting that we have is a later, I was trying to avoid going to 7 o'clock, but would a 5 o'clock work better for you?
For me, yeah, that would be a lot better. I'm sorry, I've been trying to work while being on.
No, I understand. I understand what, and Jamie, you said 5 o'clock would work for you?
That would be much easier for me.
Smart. What about you? Will a little bit later meeting work for you?
Yeah, 5 sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I was just trying to avoid being at dinner time when everybody's trying to relax and have a glass of wine or whatever we all do when we're trying to relax. So, so we'll move it to 5 o'clock for the next one. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. Give my best to Annie.
Will do. And Ernie, that is a great mustache.
Sounds good. Okay, Dave, what do you have?
Nothing really to report. We have done virtual meetings with the HOA. We have another one next week. Just trying to keep under the radar, I think.
Okay. All right, sounds good. And family doing good?
Doing well.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Dave. All right, Jamie.
So I think everyone has saw that we officially canceled the 4th of July festival. We've had a little bit of a mixed reaction. For the most part, everyone has been thankful that we have taken the steps. Some people felt it, you know, was a little premature, but in explaining that, you know, it's run by fundraising, right? It's a nonprofit event. And so right now, obtaining the funds in order to put on the event is equally challenging, as is the concern about the safety and the health of the community. So I think once that was explained, we got a lot of understanding. I don't know if everyone saw, I put it on Nextdoor and on my city council Facebook page, but King City is #1 in the response to the census. We are the #1 city in response rate in the state. So I think that was phenomenal.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And so it was something to celebrate. That was something non-COVID related. So I celebrated that widely.
Where did you see that information, Jamie, and how can I see it?
Oh, I will send it to you. So the census has a tracker, so you can track your city's response time. And in fact, I'll search for it here in a second and share it with you. I think it's just census.gov, maybe census2020.gov, but I'll double check here in a minute. And
just send me a text.
Yeah, I'll send you a text with the.
Send it to me too.
Okay, I'll do that shortly. You know, one of the things, so we are putting the foundation is putting together the task force to respond. We want to get community members, especially the business community, together and form a task force to talk about long-term community kind of strategies and support for recovery efforts. So that's starting to get underway. We have a draft email invitation that's going to go out to the community. So I will key you all in. That's something, Dave, for example, I would love for that to go out to the HOA. So I'll put that together. I had a big interview, I think, as probably everyone did, or a few of you did, with the paper. So talked a lot about some of the positive things about King City and some of the community outreach. I can't recall if we talked about all of the drive-by parades that are happening, but KCPD, TVF&R, the foundation, and then with the help of, I've looped in the Deer Creek PSO to kind of help do these mini little drive-by parades celebrating people's birthdays. So that's fun and exciting. One of the things that we have found, which, you know, at the onset of all of this, obviously we were very concerned with our isolated seniors. And what we have found is that the city is really taking care of its own. Communities, HOAs, organizations, neighbors, friends are really taking care of our residents. What we are finding is who needs help right now are super overstressed and overworked parents of children. I can tell you that I have never worked so much in my entire life. I work about 19 hours daily right now because it takes twice as long to get 7 hours of work in. And then it's like a whole nother day of work gets done after the kids go to sleep. So we are trying to figure out ways, right? We continue to be worried about our isolated seniors, especially the ones who are not connected to social, you know, to any kind of internet or social media or whatever. But we also are thinking about ways that we can support families who are in the same predicament that my husband and I are in, which is, right, it's a lot right now with homeschooling, still having to work, and, you know, not getting any of that reprieve. So we're trying to think about stuff like that too.
Well, you know, there have been many news reports now about how difficult it is for these working families and dealing with the school stuff and all of that. People are tired and stressed out, and you know, it's almost impossible to keep the balance that you. So I have greatest, deepest sympathy for you guys who are having to balance all of this. It's not easy, and I know it. So, but
thank you.
Hold it together.
Yeah, well, and it's hard, you know, the you know, I think it's great in some ways, right? There's a lot of the online resources that the schools put together is phenomenal for a little bit older students.
Right.
When you have a 4-year-old, it's hard to sit them down and say, hey, do math problems for 4 hours. So you know, everyone's getting by, but everyone's just a little cranky. So we'll get there. We'll get there.
All right, sounds good. Okay, well, I'll be ready to wrap this up. I want to commend Dave Runyon for all that he's doing down at the park. And like Mike said, he's building a shed down there. He also posted some additional signs for trying to deal with the issues of off-leash dogs. The park is getting a lot more use, and people have now found that that wonderful open space for the sports field is a good place to run their dogs off leash. So Dave has put in signs at every entry, just simply stating that this is a dog-friendly park. However, all the, pets must remain on leash at all times. And I think it's going to help the number one culprit that had been doing this for quite some time, throwing a ball to his dog, a big black lab of some sort, has been doing it for a long time. And I confronted him the other day and told him that he needed to stop. I said, we're trying to get this thing under control. Your dog must remain on a leash. I also took the time to explain to him that as a city, we would love to be able to have a dog park for people to be able to run their dogs and that kind of thing. And well, he informed me that that won't work for him because his dog is not neutered or something. I don't know. I'm not a pet owner, so I don't know how that really comes into play. But the bottom line is that I think what Dave has done will send a message, and we will continue to participate in trying to inform people that those kinds of things cannot occur. Okay.
I will say I got an email from someone who, just a King City resident, who shot me an email and thanked us because they had seen the new signs at the park, and they were extremely happy and thankful, and so I pass that along because that made them very happy.
That's what we need, and you know, and it'll give them also some tools to work with as individuals to say, hey, please, your dog is supposed to be on a leash. There's a sign right there.
Yeah,
that also works. Okay, so listen, man alive, how did we go almost 2.5 hours? I mean, my goodness, we must have had a lot to talk about. So thank you guys. Thank you very much. We're gonna need a motion to adjourn. Mike, I'll sign those checks.
Hey, Mayor. This is Smart.
Yes, Mark.
So I just want to.
Sorry. Do you have anything?
That's okay. Well, besides just attending the budget meeting, I've also been having a number of meetings canceled because of the pandemic situation.
Yes.
I just want to commend the police for law enforcement, like everyone is saying. They've been out there doing a great job. I've seen them around. People do a lot of things. Where I work in the downtown area, there's a lot of activities going on because there's no people are out, and so that's the time that a lot of these activities happen. And so I just want to commend our law enforcement for just making sure everything is still intact, and people are going about and doing what they need to do to obey the law. And question for Mike. Mike, as we go about having coming in and providing services to the public, how are we doing with the protective equipment? I mean, like the mask or sneeze shield or things like that.
We're very limited. We have some resources on that front, but we don't have very much. Ernie got a few from TVF&R for just masks and gloves. Gloves we're doing okay. Masks have been a little more challenging to get a hold of. We don't have much more than that. So we don't have.
Yeah, because in as much as we would like to provide services to the public, well, we just want to also look out for our staff members also. I mean, they're also very valuable assets. We just want to make sure we protect them as well. Thank you.
Am I missing anything? I mean, did we, is there anything else that we need or don't need, or how are we looking on that front?
Was that for me?
Yeah.
So we're just kind of at a bare minimum as far as gloves were good, eyewear were good, the masks were probably good for, if all of a sudden there was a lot of use, we'd be good for about a couple of weeks. The Washington County EOC just came out with a new order form to be able to get some more supplies that FEMA delivered. So the ability to get a little bit more, I think, is there, where I have to provide 3 days a week. I have to provide what our supply is and inventory it. And so they're aware that, we're down to, very, very low number.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Smart.
Thank you.
Okay. So Mike, I'll sign checks tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Okay. We need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Mayor.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, do that one more time. Who was it?
I moved.
Jamie and Dave.
All right, got it. Thank you.
You need a roll call vote on this?
No.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Have a
Zoom
good
high five.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.